I deployed to Afghanistan in 2011 with the Army as part of a combat engineering unit. I was 22 years old and it was my first deployment. We were based near Kandahar doing route clearance and IED detection work. If you don't know what that means, basically we were the guys who went ahead of convoys looking for bombs buried in the roads. It was dangerous work, but after a few months you get into a rhythm with it. You learn to spot the signs: disturbed dirt, fresh patches and old roads, wires sticking out. You stay alert, but you can't stay terrified every second or you'll lose your mind. This happened in October, about 6 months into our deployment. We got tasked with clearing a route to a village that hadn't been accessed in a while. Intel said the Taliban had been using the area for weapons storage, and we needed to secure it before a larger operation moved through. Our team was 6 guys: me, our team leader, Sergeant Davies, and 4 other specialists. We'd worked together the whole deployment and trusted each other completely. That matters out there. Trusting the guy next to you can be the difference between coming home or not. We started the route clearance at dawn. The road was rough, mostly dirt with some gravel, winding through rocky terrain with compounds scattered on both sides. It took us most of the morning to clear the first 3 kilometers, because there were IEDs everywhere. We found and marked 7 of them in the first few hours alone. Around noon, we reached a section where the road went through a narrow pass between 2 hills. Davies stopped us and said we needed to dismount and check it on foot because the detector was picking up too much interference from the rocks. We spread out and started walking the pass. I was on the left side, running my detector over the ground, when I noticed something that didn't look right. There was an opening in the hillside, partially hidden by rocks and brush. It looked man-made, like someone had dug into the hill. I called Davies over and we examined it. It was definitely a tunnel entrance, maybe 4 feet high and 3 feet wide. We could see it went back into the hillside, but couldn't tell how far. Davies radioed it in to command, and they told us to mark it and move on. We weren't tasked with clearing structures, just the route. But Davies decided we should at least check the entrance to make sure there wasn't an ambush waiting inside. He assigned me and another guy, Ramirez, to go in just far enough to see if it was clear. We both had flashlights mounted on our rifles and night vision goggles. The plan was to go in maybe 20 feet, confirm it was empty, and get out. Ramirez went in first, and I followed. The tunnel was tight. We had to crouch to fit through, and the walls were rough dirt reinforced with old wooden beams. The air inside was stale and smelled like earth and something else I couldn't identify. Something organic and wrong. We moved slowly, checking every shadow with our lights. After about 15 feet, the tunnel opened up into a larger chamber. It was maybe 10 feet across, and the ceiling was higher, tall enough to stand up in. That's when we saw them. There were bodies in the chamber. Not fresh ones. These had been there a while, maybe weeks or months. They were laid out against the walls, 6 or 7 of them, all in various states of decay. They were wearing civilian clothes, not uniforms. Ramirez whispered into his radio to tell Davies what we'd found. Davies said to get out immediately and that he was calling it in to command. We started backing out, keeping our rifles up, when I heard something. It was faint, coming deeper in the tunnel. It sounded like breathing, heavy, labored breathing. I stopped and listened. Ramirez heard it too. We looked at each other, and he shook his head, meaning we needed to leave now. But the breathing got louder, and then we heard movement. Something was dragging across the dirt floor further back in the tunnel. Davies was yelling in our earpieces to get out. We started moving faster, backing toward the entrance. The breathing was getting closer. Whatever was making that sound was moving towards us. We reached the narrow entrance, and I went through first, almost falling as I scrambled out. Ramirez was right behind me. As soon as we were both out, Davies and the rest of the team pulled us away from the opening. We stood there, watching the entrance, weapons raised, waiting for whatever was in there to come out. But nothing did. The breathing sound stopped. It was just silence. Davies got on the radio and explained the situation to command. They said to maintain position and that EOD was en route to deal with the tunnel. EOD is explosive ordnance disposal.
the guys who handle bombs and clear structures. We waited for about 40 minutes. None of us took our eyes off that tunnel entrance. We didn't talk about what we'd heard. We just waited. When EOD arrived, they brought a robot with a camera to send into the tunnel first. We all watched the feed on their monitor as the robot went through the entrance, down the tunnel, and into the chamber where we'd seen the bodies. The bodies were still there, but when the robot's camera panned around the chamber, we saw something else. On the far wall, there was another tunnel entrance leading deeper into the hillside. The robot moved towards it. The tunnel went back at least another 100 feet, twisting and turning. The EOD tech said it was probably part of an old Taliban tunnel network, maybe used for moving weapons or hiding fighters. But then, the robot's camera picked up something that made everyone stop talking. There were more chambers branching off the main tunnel, and in one of them, there was fresh evidence of habitation. Blankets, water bottles, food containers. Someone had been living down there recently. The EOD team leader decided not to send the robot any further. He said the tunnel was too unstable and the risk of collapse was too high. He recommended sealing it with explosives. Command approved it. They set charges at the main entrance and we all backed off to a safe distance. When they blew it, the hillside shook and the entrance collapsed, sealing the tunnel completely. We finished clearing the route and returned to base that evening. I wrote up my report about what we'd found, describing the bodies and the breathing sounds. My statement was included in the mission debrief. A few days later, Davies pulled me aside and said Command had followed up on the bodies in the tunnel. They'd sent a recovery team back to try and identify them before sealing it permanently. But when the team excavated the entrance, the chamber was empty. No bodies. Nothing. Just an empty room and the secondary tunnel leading deeper into the hillside. Davies said Command thought maybe we'd been mistaken about what we saw, that the stress and darkness had made us see things that weren't there. But both me and Ramirez know what we saw. Those bodies were real. We'd shined our lights directly on them. And more importantly, we both heard that breathing. That wasn't stress or imagination. Something was alive in those tunnels, and it was moving towards us. I've thought about it a lot over the years since I got out. About those bodies that disappeared. About the breathing sounds. About the fresh supplies deeper in the tunnel system. The official report said the tunnel network was likely abandoned Taliban infrastructure. But I don't think that's what it was. Or at least, I don't think it was just that. I think something else was using those tunnels. Something that had been down there long before we showed up, and probably stayed down there long after we left. The area where we found that tunnel was sealed off after our mission. No one goes there anymore. The village we were supposed to secure got bypassed by a different route. Command never explained why they changed the plan. But Davies told me later that our discovery had something to do with it. Whatever was in those tunnels, the military decided it was better to just leave it alone, to seal it up and forget about it. But I haven't forgotten. I still dream about backing out of that tunnel entrance, hearing that breathing getting closer, knowing that something was coming towards us through the darkness. And I think about the fact that we sealed the main entrance, but there were other tunnels branching off, other ways in and out, which means whatever was down there probably wasn't trapped. It's probably still down there, still breathing in the dark, still dragging itself through those underground chambers. And I'm glad I'm not in Afghanistan anymore.
I deployed to Afghanistan in 2013 with an Army Ranger Battalion. We did a lot of direct action missions, raids on high-value targets, that kind of thing. Most of our operations were at night, using night vision and helicopters to insert into hostile areas. This mission came down in January. Intelligence had identified a compound in Helmand Province that was supposedly being used as a Taliban command center. Our objective was to raid it, capture or kill any fighters present, and collect any intelligence materials we could find. It was supposed to be a straightforward mission. We'd done dozens like it. Fly in, secure the compound, clear all structures, call for extraction.
In and out in under an hour. Our chalk was 14 rangers, plus our dog handler and his dog, a Belgian Malinois named Rex. We'd all worked together before and were a tight unit. Our team leader was Staff Sergeant Coleman, who'd been doing this kind of work for years. We flew in on Blackhawks around 0200. The compound was in a remote area surrounded by farmland with mountains in the distance. We fast roped down about 200 meters from the target and moved in on foot. The compound matched the imagery we'd studied in our briefing. Mud walls about 8 feet high, a main gate, and 3 buildings inside the courtyard. Intelligence said there should be 5 to 8 enemy fighters inside. We breached the gate and entered the compound in a standard stack formation. The courtyard was empty. No guards, no movement, nothing. That was our first indication something was off. Even if they were asleep, there should have been at least one guy on watch. We split into teams and started clearing the buildings. The first 2 were empty. Not just no people, but no belongings, no furniture, nothing. Like no one had ever used them. The third building was different. It was larger than the others and had a heavy wooden door with a metal lock. Coleman decided we'd breach it with an explosive charge rather than trying to pick the lock. We set the charge and breached. The door blew inward and we flowed into the building. The interior was one large room, maybe 20 by 30 feet. The walls were covered in strange markings, not Arabic writing, but symbols we didn't recognize. They were painted in what looked like dried blood. In the center of the room was a pit. It was roughly circular, maybe 6 feet across, and it looked deep. We couldn't see the bottom even with our night vision. Coleman told us to secure the room and called our engineer forward to check the pit. The engineer, a guy named Martinez, pulled out a chem light and tossed it into the pit. We watched it fall. It kept falling. After what felt like 10 seconds, we saw it hit something at the bottom and the light went out immediately, like something had crushed it or covered it. Martinez said the pit had to be at least 60 feet deep, maybe more. That didn't make sense. You don't just dig a 60-foot pit by hand, especially not in a remote compound in the middle of nowhere. Coleman radioed back to our TOC, our Tactical Operations Center, and reported what we'd found. They told us to document it and continue clearing. They'd send specialists to investigate later. That's when Rex, our dog, started acting strange. He was a trained combat dog, used to gunfire and explosions, never spooked by anything, but he started whining and pulling away from the pit. His handler tried to calm him down, but Rex kept backing toward the door, eyes fixed on the pit. Then we heard something from down in the pit, a sound like scraping, like something was dragging itself across stone. We all took defensive positions around the pit, weapons pointed down. The scraping got louder. Whatever was making it was moving, coming up from the bottom of the pit. We could hear it clearly now, a wet, dragging sound, punctuated by what sounded like breathing, heavy, labored breathing. Coleman made the decision to collapse the pit. He ordered Martinez to rig explosives to bring down the ceiling and seal it. But before Martinez could start working, something appeared at the edge of the pit. It was a hand, a pale human hand, gripping the edge of the pit from inside. Then another hand appeared, and then a head. I don't know how to describe what we saw. It looked almost human, but wrong in every way. The proportions were off, the skin was too pale, and the eyes were completely black. No whites, just black. It pulled itself up out of the pit, moving in a way that didn't seem physically possible. Its joints bent at wrong angles. It was naked and covered in those same symbols we'd seen on the walls. One of our guys, I think it was Jennings, opened fire. The rounds hit center mass, but the thing didn't go down. It just turned its head towards us, tilted at an unnatural angle, and opened its mouth. The sound that came out wasn't human. It was like multiple voices screaming at once. Coleman ordered everyone out of the building. We retreated to the courtyard, and Coleman called for immediate extraction. He told our TOC we had encountered an unknown hostile and needed air support. While we waited for extraction, we kept eyes on the building. The thing didn't follow us out. It just stood in the doorway, swaying slightly, making that horrible screaming sound. Then more hands appeared at the edge of the pit inside the building. More of those things were climbing out. Our helicopters arrived maybe 10 minutes later, but it felt like an hour. As we were boarding, Coleman made the call to level the compound. He radioed for an airstrike on our position as soon as we were clear. We flew out and watched from the helicopters as 2 F-16s hit the compound with precision munitions. The entire place was obliterated, nothing left but a crater. When we got back to base, we were all debriefed separately. We were told to write detailed reports of what we encountered, but those reports were immediately classified. Coleman told us later that our entire mission had been sealed, and we were not to discuss it with anyone. The official record states that we raided a compound, found it abandoned, and destroyed it due to suspected IED materials. No mention of the pit or what we saw. But here's what I found out later, through back channels and from guys who've been in longer than me. That compound wasn't Taliban. It was something else, something the locals in that area had avoided for generations. There are stories about that place going back hundreds of years, about a pit that goes down to something that shouldn't exist. And intelligence knew. They'd known for a while. Our mission wasn't to capture Taliban fighters. It was to confirm the stories were true and assess whether it was a threat. When we reported what we found, the decision was made to destroy it completely and classify everything related to it. As far as the military is concerned, that place never existed, and we never went there. I got out of the Army 2 years after that deployment. Most of the guys from that mission are out now, too. We don't talk about it, even among ourselves. What would we say? That we found a pit in Afghanistan with things climbing out of it? That we encountered something that shouldn't exist? But I know what I saw. We all saw it. Whatever was in that pit wasn't human, and it had been down there for a very long time. And the thing that keeps me up at night is this. We destroyed that compound, but we didn't fill in the pit. We just collapsed the building on top of it, which means the pit is still there, buried under rubble. And whatever was down there, whatever we saw climbing out, might still be down there too, waiting.